I don't know, because I guess just from him, because stars like Brando and them that he idolized and Dean, they turn their collars up. So Elvis just thought, why not just make the collar bigger and then you don't have to turn it up. So that's why he did it, and he did that with his personal shirts, and then of course the jumpsuits. He had the real high. That was like that Edwardian type thing that they wore in Britain. You know, the way they wore those high collar coats and everything. So that was part of it, and I think Liberace contributed to it quite a bit. When Elvis went out there to Vegas in 1956, Liberace was there performing at the New Frontier, and he had wild outfits. And Elvis was talking to him about them, and Liberace said, well, I figure that if I can't, something happens where I can't do my show, I can always put on a fashion show. And he meant it. I'll just parade out there and let them see my gorgeous outfits. But I think Elvis realized then flamboyancy is, he's already dressing in the pinks and the blacks and the lime green and stuff in the 50s. But getting on and doing the show, he realized that there's an image up there, and you better make that image very attractive, as much so as you can, so people remember you. And that's what they sure remember.
Anyway, my name is Sandy Pichon, and one May afternoon in 1956, I said to my mother, will you take me over to Elvis's? And she said, for what? I said, I just want to go see him. And she said, do you even know where he lives? And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, get in the car. So we drove over to Audubon Drive, and just before we got there, I said, Mother, pull over. I don't want him to see my mother bringing me, like he was going to be looking out the window. And so, being the wonderful mother that she was, she pulled over 2 houses before Elvis's, and I went up and knocked on the kitchen door because, as you know, in the South, the front door's for company, and we always go in the back door. So I knocked on the door, and Alberta answered the door, and of course I didn't know who she was at the time. And I said, is Elvis home? It was like, can Elvis come out and play? Yeah, I was 11, and Elvis was 21. And she said, well, Mr. Elvis is sleeping. And I said, we'll wait. So he had a red Harley, and he had a yellow Cadillac convertible. And I sat on the motorcycle, which was facing the backyard, where they were digging the pool. And my girlfriend sat on the fender of the car, and we waited. About 15 minutes later, Mr. and Miss Presley came home from the grocery store in the pink Cadillac, and Miss Presley said, are y'all waiting for Elvis? I mean, not at all surprised to see 2 strange girls on her carport. And we said, yes, ma'am. So she said, would you like some lemonade? Yes, ma'am. So Mr. Presley brought us out some lemonade, and we continued to wait. So I said, not turning around, I'm just still looking at the back, drinking my lemonade. I said, you think he's going to come out? And she didn't say anything. And I heard the back door open, but I thought it was Mr. Presley coming to get some more groceries. And about that time, the back of the bike went down. He put his arms around me and grabbed the handlebars and said, want to go for a ride? May I just say, I didn't know that that day started the ride of my life. I promptly spilled my lemonade, and he got off the bike and he did this. Well, I was in love. I didn't know what lust was at the time, but trust me, I was in love. And I'm 70 years old today, and I'm still in love. Nothing has ever changed. But it started something in my life. Elvis had a magnetism, he had a charisma, and once you met him, there was no going back. You just knew that he had to be part of your life. So he came out and he said, what can I do for you girls today? And my girlfriend said, we'd like an autograph, and I just sat there like a bump on a log. Now here I was, gutsy enough to knock on the door, but once he walked out, and I looked in those blue eyes, I was just mesmerized. So I realized if I didn't get off the bike, I wasn't going to get my autograph, so I finally got off the bike, and he signed her book, and I got my book out, and I was like this. Just absolutely starstruck. And he said, what's your name, honey? I couldn't have told you. I just stood there and looked at him. And he got right in my face and he said, what's your name, honey? And I said, Sandra. And so he wrote to Sandra, love, Elvis Presley. That was back in 56 when he was still writing love on autographs. So he said, girls, I hate to tell you, but I've got to go somewhere today. but you're welcome to come back anytime. Well, trust me when I say I took him at his word. If I wasn't at home, I was at Audubon Drive. And my mother said, after about the third trip in 1 week, I'm not driving to Audubon Drive every day. And I said, I don't care, I'll walk. And she said, just be home by dark. Of course, it was a different time back then. And we were just a little over a mile and a half. And to a kid, that's no peace. I wouldn't even drive in that neighborhood that I had to walk through then, you know. But as a matter of fact, I went and measured the mileage when I first moved back here a few years ago. But over the years in the summer, before Elvis added closed the carport in, the patio in, and made it into a den, I would go over there, and they were just so gracious. Miss Presley would say, come in, they're out on the patio or whatever, and I'd go back there just like I knew what I was doing and sit down and watch him beat on the side of an acoustic guitar and sing and laugh and just marvel that I was even in his presence. He was just such an incredible man. And so after about a year of going back and forth and getting to know his mother and talking to his daddy, and my daddy bought a restaurant in Florida. I never forgave him. So we moved, and I didn't see Elvis again until 1973. And he kept coming over in front. There was a show, and he kept coming over in front of me, and I was not going to get up. I wasn't like those other girls. I was not getting up and going to the stage. Of course, after one night, that changed. Well, at the end of the show, he still had one scarf left, and it was soaking wet. And he got down, he had his cape up, and he looked up at me, and he winked, and he took his scarf, and he did like this, and I just sat there. And so the two girls on each side of me were fighting over it, and one of them grabbed it and took off with it, and Hamburger James went and got it. Sonny said it was the only thing Hamburger James ever did nice in his life. So he went and got that scarf, and he brought it back to me, and he said, Elvis wanted you to have this. Yes. So the next night, when he came over and stood in front of me, I was like a jack in the box. Whoop, I'm at the stage. So there were 5 shows, and I got 5 kisses and 5 scars. But I never got the chance to talk to him. So the year goes on, and my girlfriend from Alabama called me, and she said, I'm going to Graceland for Christmas. You want to go? Elvis is always home at Christmas. And I said, sure. So we got here, and Harold said he was over at Stax making a record. So he said, y'all need to go over there. Well, you know, if I'm going to knock at the door on Audubon Drive, I'm trying to get in Stax. The doors were locked, and there was coverings over the windows. It was starting to snow. It was December the 13th, and it was starting to snow. And so we went back and got in the car, and she said, well, what do you want to do? You want to wait? And I said, I don't know. And this guy comes out of Stax, and he stops by our car, and I let the window down, and he hands me 2 cups of hot chocolate, and he said, the man inside thought you might be cold. Alrighty then. So I'm looking at her, and she looks at me, man inside. Of course, I'm sure there were cameras, but at the time, I thought, how did he know we were out here? So a few minutes later, the guy comes back, and I think, we're going to get run off. And she said, wow, we hadn't done anything. So he stops again at the car, and he said, you can come inside, but there'll be no pictures, no questions, no. I almost knocked him down getting out of the car. So we go in Stax, and it's kind of a ratty little place, and you go up the stairs. It was not at all, not glamorous, not what you would think for a recording studio. And we were not in the area where Elvis was, but there were times we could hear what he was singing, and we got to hear him do Love in Arms, about 7 to 8 cuts of that, and it was just incredible. He had on a burgundy corduroy shirt that was a waist-length cape, black pants, and black boots with silver tips. Oh, his hair was messy, and he was gorgeous. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, he said, did anybody order pizza? And they said no. And he said, well, let's call it a night. So the guy comes back in, and to this day, I don't know who he was. We thanked him profusely, but I never did ask him what his name was. So we leave, and Joyce said, Sonny went out to warm up the studs, and she said, you want to wait? And I said, I don't know. She said, well, we've been pretty lucky tonight. Let's go on back to the hotel. And let me just say here, in the Stax album that FTD just released, that's my picture of the Stutz by the sound truck that they used, and they also used it in the Promised Land. So my pictures got around for a while. So anyway, we go back to Howard Johnson's right down the street from Elvis, and we're unloading the car, and here comes the Stutz around the corner. And Sonny and Elvis were bringing Kathy Westmoreland back to her room. And Joyce said, don't try to take his picture. He's got glaucoma, he doesn't like the flash bulbs, blah, 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 blah. Because she was experienced at being a stalker, and this was my first excursion. So I took my camera and put it on top of the ice machine, and we just stood there. And when he got out of the car, he looked up and he said, don't you girls ever sleep? And I said, not when you're around. So he started laughing, and he said, how'd you like what you heard tonight? So we weren't sure that he knew we were there, but he did. And we told him it was great, and we appreciated him letting us come in. And I said, do you have time for an autograph? And he said, sure. So I had a picture of him with that orange scarf, my first scarf, and when I handed it to him, he looked at me and he said, honey, I know you, but I don't remember your name. And I said, well, I used to come by the house on Autumn Drive. He looked at me a minute and he said, your name starts with an S. And I, yes, it does. And he said, Sharon. And I'm like, no. And he was so sure it was Sharon. And Anna bought my first book, Raised on Elvis. She bought that book tonight. And if you'll look in there, there's a picture of the picture that he signed, and he had started to write Sharon, S-H, and I said Sandra, and he changed the H to an A, and then the pen quit writing, and he's like, do you have another pen? You know, it was like by then it was 3:30 in the morning, but he was just so sweet and so gracious. So he signed a picture for Joyce, and he said, well, girls, he said, I guess I'll see you on tour, and I said, I guess you will, and he said, okay, Sandra, and he kind of repeated my name, so I was thrilled. Well, fast forward to March of '74, and Elvis was staying at Howard Johnson's in the room next to us, and we had not told anybody he was there. Of course, we weren't real sure until we started seeing the limos. Joyce had said, he's here, and I said, why would he be here? And she said, the guys are here. They're not going to be here if he's not here. Okay, so when everybody else left to go to the show, we stayed. So one of the Memphis policemen came in with Joe Esposito and Dick Grove and thanked us for not telling anybody, and we just acted all knowing. Oh yeah, we wouldn't tell anybody. We didn't know ourselves, but anyway. So Elvis came out, we're standing at the door, and he looked at us, and we looked at him, and he did this, and we nodded, and nobody said a word. So we ran back out to the balcony. We're standing on the balcony taking pictures of him getting in the car, and they're in my book too. And Elvis, as he started to get in, pulled his head back out, and he looked up, and he said, are y'all going to the show? And we said, yes. And he said, well, let's go. Well, we flew down the steps. Joyce had a gold and white Thunderbird, and it was like a Memphis policeman, Elvis's car, Joyce's car, the second limo, and then another motorcycle cop, and we were ripping through the streets of Memphis with Elvis at 85 miles an hour. That was so, I can't even tell you how fun it was. And I'm taking pictures all the time. And he would wave, and I got pictures of him grinning, and then I got pictures of him not grinning. And so I'm like, get back behind him. Because they're going to either run us out or run us off the road. But when we got to the Mid-South Coliseum, there was a tunnel that he could go in and come up right by the stage, and we had to park in a no parking zone. So we were running down the aisle trying to get to our seats, and just as he was coming out, and that spotlight hit us, and he looked down and saw us, and he said, haven't I seen you girls somewhere before? And our friends were all saying, what's that all about, you know? So we were like kind of, I don't know, we were just coming with Elvis and and the entourage. So after the show, that was an afternoon show, so we went back to the hotel, and he had changed hotels. He had moved over to the Holiday Inn Rivermont. So we had lunch with Charlie and Sonny and Dick and Red and everybody, and I couldn't eat. And so we introduced ourselves. Joyce already knew Charlie. And when they got to me, Sonny said, I said, Sandra, and he said, does anybody call you Sandy? And I said, no. And he said, well, you look like a Sandy. That's what we're going to call you. Okay. So I've been Sandy ever since. He said, would you like to go up to Elvis's suite? And I'm like, oh, yes. Let me think about that. Yes. Didn't take me a minute. So I said, Joyce too? He said, yes, Joyce too. So we're getting on the elevator, and we go to his suite first, and we're pacing back and forth. He's in there changing clothes, and so we go over to Elvis's suite, and Elvis and Linda are coming out of the bedroom, and she's got little flowered things on her toenails. That was new at that time, and I thought that was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. Couldn't wait to go back and get flowers on my toenails. Anyway, so Elvis looked at me for a minute, and then he said, Sandra, and Sonny goes, no, boss, we're going to call her Sandy. Elvis said, you call her what you want to. I just got the Sandra down. But he never called me by my name. There were so many girls, as you might guess. I mean, it was always honey or baby, and then it's not like we had a whole lot of one-on-one conversations, but we did have a few. And it was just a really special time in my life. After that, I thought he couldn't sing if we weren't there. And so I went to over 100 concerts, and I got 16 scarves and 6 guitar picks, but I was living in Louisiana when Katrina struck. So I have the scarves, but unfortunately his DNA is no longer on them. I had to wash them and wash them and wash them because they faded together.
Well, it was a fantastic experience to work with Elvis. Elvis and I were both under contract to Hal Wallace, who was known as the Star Maker. And I remember the day that Hal Wallace said that I'd be making my next movie with Elvis. And I was an incredible fan of his. So and then he said, you'll be doing it in Hawaii. Wow, that's awesome. Elvis was a fabulous actor, very underrated by a lot of the conventional.
I did. I shook his hand when he gave me the scarf. I just grabbed his hand, he pushed the scarf into me, and I rushed the stage. The poor man didn't look too well. And across the road that night, Danny and the Juniors were playing. That was on the 25th of June, 1976, New York. New York State. And I went back to Canada in the bus with that scarf, and I had it hidden down my trousers. When I was on the coach, somebody said to me, they were crying, they were Irish from Northern Ireland, and they were talking about Elvis, and they were saying this and saying that. And I said, oh, what about if Elvis gave you a scarf, what would you do? When I got off the coach and the door was shut, I showed them the scarf, and they were banging like mad. And that was it. I have the scarf right here with me today.
I think they sensationalized a lot of it. I mean, and the thing they didn't, and it gets me, I mean, I was going to do a film myself, but the people said that they went, well, no, we got to do a balance, so we got to talk about some of the bad stuff too. And I said, no. I said, we don't need to sensationalize Elvis's life because it was sensational to begin with. He was the American dream. I mean, so exaggerations, no. They don't need to. I mean, I saw the one with Kurt Russell. I thought it was pretty good. I just didn't like him sitting there talking to a shadow and say, Jesse, that never happened. No.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Kurt Russell did a great job, don't get me wrong. It was a good film, but I mean, now you're talking about somebody that spent 17 years of their life with the man, so, I mean, I notice all of the details.
Yes, on a number of occasions we got to go. The thing that I remember most, Speedway or something with Nancy Sinatra, and the reason I remember it is because of Ice Station Zebra was being shot at that time with Rock Hudson, and then there was Jim Brown were just kind of coming on making films, and then of course the television shows Man from U.N.C.L.E. Then we met the karate guy Bruce Lee from Green Hornet. We got to meet all these really well-known stars in entertainment, and Paul Newman and all of that. So, yeah, on a couple occasions, I was able to be there, and it was a blast.
I have several little stories that I might tell you because I'm kind of no stranger to Graceland because I've been there, and I made cakes for Elvis. I was working in a local bakery, and Vernon would come in to order the pastries and so forth for like on the weekends. And I saw him this particular day, and I said, I think you need to try a homemade cake, because Elvis's favorite cake was a 3-tier coconut cake. And so he said, well, why don't you make me one and let's see. So I did, and from then on I made all their cakes at Graceland. And every time that I would deliver a cake, I'd go up there and, of course, go through the gate. They called down and told them that I was coming, and several times Linda Thompson met me at the door and invited me in, and she is gorgeous. Every time I would go, she would have like some kind of a Chinese outfit or gold, this or that. She was so
35-cent drag when you brought somebody with you. And the place looked so big back then. And when I just filmed it not too long ago, it looked like it wasn't no bigger than that little room right there. And but Elvis used to come in there. He ran around with a guy named Paul Dewar and a guy named Farley Guy, and also but another guy named John Swain, who went on to be a legitimate actor in New York. And you know, it seems like we used to do this back in 1952 and 53 at the at Holy Names, a little auditorium sort of thing, and then they had a great jukebox, and we danced to jukebox back then, but that seems like so long ago, and we went to different venues together. I was with Johnny, another friend of mine, Johnny Burnett, who went to school with me, and he used to play out at a place called the Eagle's Nest. He had a group called the Rock and Roll Trio, with he and his brother Darcy and a guy named Paul Burleson. And they played out at the Eagle's Nest out on Lamar back in 1951. They lived in Lauderdale Court too. And many times Elvis asked could he sit in with them at Lauderdale Court while he was practicing. They'd run him off. Then Elvis would come out to the Eagle's Nest, and they would let him sit in and play out there. This was in, say, 51 and 52. And, you know, it was Johnny and Darcy and Paul. They were Golden Gloves champions, and they were real tough. And back then, Elvis liked to be around a lot of tough guys. He wasn't a tough guy. He wasn't an athletic guy, because he played 2 games with us on the football team, which I played on for 15 years, and also he never played on the softball team. I've got pictures of that. I've got pictures of, I didn't know that thing was going to be that popular back then. And about 2 years ago, at the Super Bowl of 2011, Bill Morris, the mayor of Memphis, he called me up and he said, "Can you get all the guys that played on the football team till we could go up to Graceland and we can do a little show?" And they give us our jerseys and everything, and I still got mine, 2 of them. And in order to do it, it was for charity. It was cost $500. Well, I didn't have $500, so Mr. Tony Gelati put up my $500 for Marlowe's, and Sonny West and I rode together up there, and wasn't but about maybe 6 guys, because 13 of them are dead, and about 6 of them didn't want to do it anyway. And so George Klein, he said he was our honorary coach. He said, "Gene, come on, we're gonna run a few plays." I said, "Run a few plays? I'm 75 years old, I ain't running nothing. We just up here for the show." Jerry Schilling was the coach of the other team. And about maybe 12, 15 guys showed up. That some of them were part of the guys that played behind Graceland at Graceland School that never was part of the football team, the one that was sanctioned. All those trophies you see up at Graceland, we won them for him. I don't think we lost but about 2 games in about 10 or 12 years. And but you know, he was very nice. He was a very nice guy, and he ordered our uniforms, and I mean every year he would say, I'd say like, we need new uniforms, and he'd say, okay, Winnie. He said, go up and see this guy at North York Arms, a guy named Freddie Bajaki. We'd go up there and we'd order all that stuff and come back, and me and a guy named Ralph Galtelli, who's dead now, he was our coach. We gave Elvis the bill. It was a little over $5,000. And he said, oh, okay. And he said, here, Daddy, pay for that. And he gave it to Vernon. Vernon said, oh, Elvis, how can we afford this? And Elvis said, oh, Daddy, pay it. And Vernon was, he just never wanted to, I guess he remembers the times when he was young and didn't have nothing. He knew that time might come again. So that was a little story about the football team. But you know, it's every little story triggers another one. But you know, that's all of that.
Where were you and what were you doing when you heard he had passed away?
I worked for the IC Railroad. I was a conductor. And I was on my way home from Woodstock, Tennessee. We were out there with the railroad, with the train and everything, switching Grace Chemical Company, DuPont Chemical Company. And I was coming home, I heard on the radio about, seemed like it was around 2 o'clock, and sometimes it said, they broke a bulletin, said Elvis Presley is being rushed to the hospital. And before I got home, they said he had died. And it heard they had the thing about on the radio about the ambulance, and the guy with the ambulance, he was saying, breathe, Presley, breathe, like that. And I can remember that vividly. And by the time he got to the hospital, he was dead. And it seems like, you know, everything happened within a mile of his life, where he started, where he died, where he went to school. It was all within a mile and a half or 2 miles from where he died. And that's ironic, from the places that he used to mess around. And, you know, it was really something, man. And when by the time I got home, word had spread. It wasn't 2 hours later that there was, oh man, it ended up being over 85,000 people down there, and it was hot as heck. People were passing out, and I used to hang around the Hickory Log, which was right across the street, and you know, it was such a sad thing that, I mean, I seen grown people crying, and Charlie Hodge used to come over there all the time, play the pinball machine. And they tell me at one time, 2 times, Elvis would come over there to cash a check, and Bonnie and Hobart Burnett, who owned it, they later owned Vernon Presley's house, which was right behind Graceland, right beside of Graceland. Had a back gate that went right up to Graceland, and you know, there's a lot of stories that can come off of that, and but that's where I was when I heard that he had died, and very sad.
My sister, my brother-in-law, and myself, we did go to his house up in Glendora, in the Glendora Mountains, hills actually, and it was actually a house that had windows all the way around to overlook the valley.
Sounds good.
One night at the Fairgrounds, it was a ride called the Rocket. It's set on an oval like that. You stood in like a little cylinder, and it goes around, and just centrifugal force puts you up against the side, and it just actually make you sick. I wouldn't ride it. Elvis operated. There's a big stick coming out of the floor, and it operated it. I was up there talking to him one night, and he had a big drink in his hand. And I said, Elvis, what do you think those people do if you took that drink and poured it over them as they went by? He said, I don't know, let's find out. Because he just poured it over everybody screaming, carried on, you know. Now another time, his favorite ride out there was the Dodgem car. Bumper car, some people call it bumper car. But anyway, one night he got up off the car. I think he was getting ready to go home. No, he wasn't going home. I don't know what he got up for. He got to eat something or whatever. But his pants were ripped in the back. I mean, the seat was ripped all the way around. And, you know, there's people saying, you know, he didn't wear underwear. Believe me, he didn't. He did not. Anyway, we told him, he says, anybody got any pants? And this guy said, his name was Bobby. He said, yeah, I got some in the trunk of the car. He said, could I use them? So he goes to the trunk of the car and comes back with these old pants. And they look like mechanic pants. I mean, you know, the old dirty looking pants. And Elvis went to the bathroom and put them on. He came walking back out and I looked at him and started laughing. He said, that's okay, all right, that's enough. He wore those ugly looking pants all night long. Of course, I guess that's better to wear those pants than let his butt be showing all night. I mean, you know, but it was funny.
38 years. She's sitting right over there when we were dating. I didn't know she ran around with us. We was out on a date one night after eating to a movie. And she wasn't ready to go home. She said, let's go by to Memphis and see what else is showing movies. I said, whatever it is. She said, we'll get in and watch it. She said, whatever you do, don't say anything to him, because he don't know you. So, stupid me, I was getting ready to go to the restaurant. I ran in the lobby and said, hey! He grabbed his pistol and went, whoa! The body boss said, shoot! I just wanted to meet you, I'm sorry. I scared you. He go in and shook my hand. That's the first time I met him. I've always been a fan of his. And saw him later on, I said, I really love your music, along with about 15 trillion zillion billion other people. He's really a nice guy. And I've always been an Elvis fan. I didn't know thought I'd get to meet him. But anyway, I thought this was amateur night. These guys have been great. Now the amateur night starts.
Hi, folks. You know, I'm not really old. I just carry this cane for effect. But I'm so happy to be here tonight, even if it's just for a few minutes. I'm doing the Elvis Presley Memorial Dinner charity event tomorrow night. It'll be the 17th year. And I wanted to come to be here for Carrie today because they're raising money for Alzheimer's. So I hope that you will support her benefit and help her with this. It's very worthwhile. Sometimes I think I'm a candidate for the Alzheimer's help myself, but it seems like that I can't remember too many things long ago. And somebody asked me one day about something that Elvis did 30 years ago, and I said, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. But I am happy that you're here. You have no idea what it means to me to see so many of you people come to town every year to honor this man. And the only thing that I really ask of you is that you only honor him. Don't worship him. Don't idolize him. But honor him, because that's all he would want you to do. And he was a great friend. He was a great man. As you know, he had a beautiful voice. He was very generous, very loving, very giving. And he always wanted to do something for somebody else. It was not important to him that he knew the person. It was only important to him that he knew the need of someone. And that's what he really spent his life doing. So I thank you so much for being here and supporting this event. And I know I'm going to be seeing some of you at the Elvis Presley Memorial Dinner tomorrow night. So enjoy the show. I think you've got some good performers here, and it looks like these guys in red shirts are ready to play. So have a great time, and thanks for having me.
I was in the 9th grade when he was in the 12th grade. He wore the always dressed very nice. He wore the green chartreuse shirts, and the leisure suits, and the pink, I guess you'd call the fuchsia. He never bothered anybody, minded his own business, was very polite, and always acted in a nice way.
Yes, I can. Well, you know, like I said, I'm from Memphis. Back in the 60s and early 70s, there was this TV show called Teen Party or Talent Party on Channel 13. And the host was George Klein, and they called him the Geeker or something like that. And so they had the Sears teen board, and I got to go to the teen board, and I got to go to the talent party. And George Klein's a good friend of Elvis's, and so he gave me free premiere tickets to an Elvis film. And I think Anne Margaret was in it, and anyway, that was the most exciting thing, going to a premiere. I didn't see Elvis or anything, but just the idea of going there.